Hey guys, what's up? It's Kevin for the win here, and we're back for another edition of Diablo III. Today on the channel, we are playing the Hammer of the Ancients Immortal Kings build. So, for those of you who are not familiar with the Immortal Kings armor, these are particularly the pieces of it. The 2-piece bonus says that Call of the Ancients last pretty much until they die. The 4-piece bonus, I should say, allows very fast cooldown of Wrath of the Berserker and Call of the Ancients. And then the 6-piece bonus basically says that you do more damage whenever your Call of the Ancients and Wrath of Berserker's up. In order to get the most out of our Hammer of the Ancients particular attack, we're going to be using the Little Rogue and Slander, which allow us to get stacks of primary basically stacks that for every time you attack with a primary resource, you attack faster, which will allow us to drop the hammer a lot more. We're going to be using the Traveler's Pledge and Compass Road. We're going to be using Wrath of the Berserker, Insanity. We are going to be using Hammer of the Ancient Smash, Threatening Shout, Falter, Battle Rage. And then we're also going to be using Furious Charge just to get a little further around in place. And then for Call of the Ancients to Garrus one, that's like the best ability to run with Call of the Ancients. And that's are pretty much the abilities we're going to run. And the Knight's Cube, Gravel of Judgment, Mortrix Brace, and pretty much you can run in the ring. Pretty much you want the particular ring which allows you to get a buff to Furious Charge, which is the Band of Might, if I remember correctly. Okay, so we are going to start with a Greater Rift 60. Then go 65, then go 70, then go 75, and see how well this armor will do. We do not have a lot of augmentation into our armor here, so keep that in mind. So once you get into the Greater Rift, you immediately are going to want to cast your Call of the Ancients and then your Wrath of the Berserker, and then pretty much you're going to just walk around the screen, dropping your Hammer of the Ancients particular ability. And then as you're walking around the screen, smashing through enemies with that hammer, you are going to constantly want to keep an eye on your particular cooldown and pretty much constantly cast Call of the Ancients whenever you can, as well as Wrath of the Berserker. Now, keep in mind, if there are not a lot of mobs in your area, it's probably not a good idea to waste a Call of the Ancients or Wrath of the Berserker cooldown. You pretty much always want to attack in particular with that when you know that you have a large area of mobs. And Fierce Charge, as you see there, I misused it there. Basically, you want to use that whenever you need to clear a gap or you're near enemies and you want to try to get the Massacre bonus to be sustained. Otherwise than that, you're really not going to want to. Good thing about Call of the Ancients particularly here is that they will pretty much last until they die. And they take a lot of damage actually before they die, so you're able to clear things out, and they do a lot of damage as well. I mean, in theory, maybe you could run an Enforcer because I believe they count as pets, but I don't necessarily recommend it for this particular build. You probably want to just use the Mortrix Brace because you get a bit more mileage. Now, for Threatening Shout, pretty much you want to cast Threatening Shout whenever you are in a large density of mobs where you have elite packs because you'll be able to do more damage. But for all intents and purposes, it's cast Call of the Ancients, cast Wrath of the Berserker, drop your Hammer of the Ancients multiple times, smash things into oblivion, and then pretty much rinse and repeat. And that's pretty much how you run the set. Furious Charge whenever you want to try to maintain a Massacre bonus. Furious Charge really is not going to do too much for you on this particular armor set. If you want to look at a Furious Charge build, you need to go with the Rykor armor, which I have not actually covered as of yet. I'm looking to do that in the not-so-distant future, so definitely be on the lookout for that video. Still trying to find a good Rykor build with Furious Charge. Not really a fan, actually, of Furious Charge as a ability for the Barbarian. Now, keep in mind, this is not your Season 22 starter set for the Barbarian. That is actually the Horde of 90 Savages, which I just recently covered on the channel. If you are curious as to that particular starter set, make sure to definitely take a look in our playlist for Diablo III, and you'll be able to find it with relative ease. There is where you can find all previous videos where we cover a lot of Diablo content, and we cover a wide range of armors. The goal is to pretty much cover every armor throughout the season, and then maybe we revisit some as we do further optimization. And then obviously when Season 23 comes out, obviously quite a while from now, we'll have to take a look at whatever new armors, new weapons, new pieces are introduced as well, and then we'll do updated videos of that. So that's pretty much how we operate in regards to our Diablo 3 content. If you are a more visual person that needs to see things on paper with words, there is a link to the armor build in the description, so you can see every piece of gear you need, every ability that you need to run, every piece of ancient legendary pieces that you need, and how to augment them, stats, everything. So I link you to Icy Veins, a very, very, very good resource for Diablo free content, as well as pretty much just about any other Blizzard game that you like to play as well. So again, it's not the most fancy armor build. It's not going to be the fastest armor of the Barbarian. If you want to do speed farming Barbarian, you have two options, really. You want the end-all to be-all S tier, which is the Whirlwind Barbarian, which you can find a video of that also in our playlist. And that one you pretty much will clear through Greater Rifts just spinning around until the end of the Greater Rift, and you will get very, very far and high leaderboard placement. That's pretty much one of the best S-tier armors available in Diablo 3, and that is one of the armors that is always very, very high on the leaderboards whenever a season comes out. 90 Savages will do you very well as well. That's a pretty fast armor. And then it's pretty much from there. I would say Immortal Kings is a very, very good push build. This is an armor when you fully optimize it and you have the right stats in everywhere that you needed to have the right stats, that you can, in theory, push Greater Rifts up to about 135 to 138. Probably not going to get you a Greater Rift 150 solo. Those are really hard to do, but it is possible still, at the very least. So I'm just augmenting random gems here, just so I can, or not augment, but leveling them so we can augment it into our armor slot. So I think probably we're going to come in somewhere around maybe the 4-minute range, perhaps, with this clear time. Ideally, you want to see about 4 to 5 minute clear times. Alright, so that was a 4-minute clear time. So that's on average was a very well performance for something that's generally a push build. Keep in mind, Immortal Kings isn't a push build. It's not a speed build. So you're not going to necessarily be clearing through things at the fastest lightning blazing speeds, but you will be punching through things and making them explode with your hammer quite frequently and consistently. So, again, really, this is a matter of where you just got to keep an eye on your particular abilities and when they're on cooldown. Ideally, the most optimal way to play this is that you always have a chance to recast Call of the Ancients and Wrath of the Berserker. There are situations where if you ran out of mobs and there's nowhere to smash so that your little rogue and Slander has a chance to actually procure its stack, where you will probably be in a situation where you're not able to cast and you're waiting for cooldown. In those type of situations, it's best to try to rely on your War Cry and your Furious Charge to be able to get a little bit of distance. Keep in mind, you can obviously run Goaka Swiftness. Goaka Swiftness would do very well in this particular thing. So I would go, in my personal opinion, I would do Bane of the Trap. I would do Bane of the Stricken, and then Goak of Swiftness for my particular build. For gems, you could run Enforcer if you wanted to call on the Ancients to do more damage, but really, they're just there to help support your hammer as opposed to anything else. So I really wouldn't start investing in things like Tasker and Theo, Masker Jerome. I think you're better off augmenting your Hammer of the Ancients, where really that's your primary source of damage, and everything else is there to help support you. Keep in mind, like with this armor, the whole point is for you to have Call of the Ancients and Wrath of the Berserker up so that it buffs you tremendously for when you use your rest of your attacks, which is just going to be the hammer. So that's pretty much what they're there for. They're not the main source of damage. Your main source of damage is your Hammer of the Ancients. Now, some people might, in the comment section, ask, why are we not using the hammer that comes with the Immortal King set? Well, it's very slow. Little Rogue and Slander allow us to attack faster, which allows us to blow up things a lot faster. So that's why. Two-handed weapon, speed, and we get stacks, and the more primary resources we spend and continue to spend, we will get faster and faster. Just makes perfect sense, in my opinion, to use that particular weapons as opposed to the hammer. The hammer looks cool and all, and trust me, I got a Primal Ancient Legendary Hammer for this set that it just kills me that I'm not able to use it, but it's not something that helps this build or makes this build very effective, which is why we opt not to use the hammer, as ironic as it is, even though we are using Hammer of the Ancients. And it's kind of funny where the hammer comes out of pretty much virtually nowhere at this point. So, again, pretty much as you see here, I'm waiting on cooldown, keeping an eye, cast my Call of the Ancients, then I will cast a Wrath of the Berserker, and pretty much keep smashing through things. It's just really a matter of just constantly... There, I got some Fierce Charge off, so I got a little bit more tanky and bulky there as well. It's really a matter of just micromanaging, your cooldown and just constantly being able. The way you run this effectively is always having Call of the Ancients or Wrath of the Berserker up. There will be a situation where you might run into not enough mobs on screen, and then there's no cooldown because you couldn't get the stacks required, and you have to wait. Then, really, that's where Warcry will probably come in a little bit beneficial, because you can then secure some critical hits while you're dropping the hammer, while you're waiting to try. See, at those situations, you probably want to hang back a little bit to a cooldown and not try to go hyper-aggressive, because you might be able to take out some mobs, but as you get higher up in the Elite Pack and higher up in the Greater Rifts in particular, you are going to see problems. Now, there are builds that you can run for Barbarian that work pretty much as well as Hammer of the Ancients Immortal Kings. There's Leap Quake Barbarian, which I'm going to go back to in, I believe, next week. And I'm going to show you guys how to run that with the Seismic Slam added to that. I was trying out the Ancient Spear build because I like the idea of trying to pull enemies into me and leap quaking into them. Obviously, some people were not too happy with that when I did it that way. And we're like, oh, you know Seismic Slam is it? Yes, I know it exists, but I was trying out different builds because not always when it comes to Diablo do you have to show off or play necessarily what's considered meta skills. Sometimes you need to think outside of the box. And sometimes I like to experiment outside of the box to see what can also be effective and also fun to play. Because if we're all playing the same armor all the time with the same skills, it gets kind of boring and it can get kind of stale fast. Where is this Rift Guardian? All right, there he is. So as you can see, once you drop about 3 or 4 Hammer of the Ancients, thanks to Bane of the Stricken, as well as just having Call of the Ancients up with your Wrath of the Berserker, which is getting all the ruins, thanks to Mortrix Brace being in the KNOX Cube, you can pretty much explode through Rift Guardians with general ease as well. I'd say this is probably going to be another 4-minute clear time for us here. Haven't really gotten anything that I could use particularly for more armor. Like, I was hoping to get more ancient legendary pieces to drop of things I wanted to use on this set. Particularly the rings and the bracer would be most ideal. Unfortunately, we didn't get that. So I'm going to continue to augment here Bane of the Powerful. I actually got to go higher up in the Grey Rift there because it's already a bit too high there to be able to augment. Or level up, I should say. Alright. Let's see, I'm saying probably 4-minute clear time. My guess would be here. Oh, yeah, 4-minute clear time. Alright, this is a Greater Rift 70, and then we'll do 75 to pretty much end the day here. We were able to get 2 Fierce Charges up, so we got to start off a bit bulky. Strategy, again, never changes. You're always going to immediately, when you get into a Greater Rift, as soon as possible, cast Call of the Ancients and Wrath of the Berserker, and then start dropping your hammer down, and as you're continuing to pound through things, keep an eye on the cooldown, and then when you see that it's available to cast Call of the Ancients and Wrath of the Berserker, cast it. Ideally, you want to have those particular buffs, always up on your armor so that you can pass or push through and smash through things at the most optimal of speed. So that's definitely something that will take a little bit of getting used to. I know there's a lot of things that are happening on screen, so sometimes it could be very easy to not know that your Call of the Ancients is either no longer up or is about to be able to be refreshed where you can, keep up the stack going. Case in point there, I knew it was keep on going. It takes a while. Like, obviously in the armor, after doing a certain amount of stacks, you get a 3-second cooldown for Call of the Ancients. So you can kind of pace yourself after you're dropping a lot of hammers and you have had Wrath of the Berserk up for a thing. You could kind of count 1, 2, 3, and go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. By the third rotation, 1, 2, 3. That's probably when you need to cast your Call of the Ancients and Wrath of the Berserker. So that's pretty kind of like a little tip. You could do that kind of like in your head as you're smashing through things to kind of know when it's time to thing, in case you can't really keep an eye on the screen, because obviously, there's a lot going on as you get higher up in the greater rifts. But I will say, this is probably one of the more fun builds to play as the Barbarian, just because it's a very different play style, and you're not just speeding through things and just slashing or holding one button, and you have to do multiple things here, so it's a bit more sophisticated build. It requires a bit more thinking. This is actually going to be a great situation in where you are not going to have your Wrath of the Berserk up and Call of the Ancients up as well. I think I actually just casted poorly a Call of the Ancients, because if there's not a lot of mobs around... Oh, okay, well, we're at the exit gate, so maybe it wasn't the worst situation. But you will run into a situation where you don't have cooldown. Case in point here. Because of the situation, we didn't have cooldown on Wrath of the Berserk, but we had Call of the Ancient. So, alright. Kind of want to hang back in situations like that, but since it was the beginning of pretty much the gate to this particular area, we had to just kind of deal with the hand we were dealt with. But now we can kind of just keep it up. Drop the hammer down. Make sure you're getting those stacks of Little Rogue and Slander. And then just constantly shift between Call of the Ancients and Wrath of the Berserker every time you see that it requires... to be clicked again after cooldown. I mean, try to stay as aggressive as possible without getting blown up in particular explosions. If there's not a lot of mobs on the screen, that's when you're going to run into the situations where you don't have cooldown. And maybe in those situations, don't cast a Call of the Ancients. Don't cast a Wrath of the Berserker. Wait till you see a mob and a lot of mobs, and then decide to start punching again. I got to look at the map here, because... this is one of those particular dungeon layouts where I have a tendency to get lost. Despite the fact that I've grinded in these type of situations so many times, it is still very, very easy to get lost and to not be able to find your way. Alright. That's why I held clicking Wrath of the Berserker and Call of the Ancients till I found something like an Elite Pack, because there weren't a lot of enemies on screen, and it was very hard. And even now, I'm kind of still concerned that there's not a whole bunch of mobs coming towards us. It's like we dealt with them all pretty much already here. Now, people are probably asking, why are we not using a Flavor of Time for the necklace? Traveler's Pledge does a lot better for us, because whenever we're moving, we take less damage, and wherever we're standing still. And keep in mind, there are situations where we are standing still because we are dropping the Hammer of Ancients, where we're not moving around with that sometime. That's more ideal for this particular playstyle. Having the double effectiveness of pylons and having them last the duration longer is nice and all, but you're going to get more mileage out of having Traveler's Pledge and Compass Rose as your ring for a lot more mileage. You'll be able to push a lot higher into the greater rifts as well. Now, for optimization, what you want on your particular armor, I always am like a broken record and will tell you guys, it really comes down to, you want high hit crit ratio on your helm. So you want 6.0. If you could get an attack speed on your helm as well, that would be great. It's kind of hard to do that. It's mere RNG. For your gloves, you're going to want to have hit crit ratio as the highest you can, and crit damage to 50%. If you can get on your gloves attack speed 7 or 8, that's great. 6 is still okay. 5 even is okay if you have the particular things at max, then it's perfectly fine to have that as well. That's hard, though. That's a matter, again, of RNG, and then having an Ancient Legendary piece of that is another one of those factors of maybe RNG is lucky to you, maybe not. You're probably going to have to use Death Breaths to kind of modify one stat or for another, but definitely make sure you can get the best stats possible for those on there, because they will effectively, if you have high crit rate chance and, do a lot of crit hit damage, you will be able to push further into greater rifts, which is something that sometimes people are lost on. Ideally, on your armor, you want the best rolls of strength possible, because obviously Barbarian is all about strength. Then armor, you could have good armor on them in particular. Vitality really is one of those things that I said in the other video that I did last episode that we did a Diablo video, is one of those things where Vitality, some people say you need it, some people say you don't. Honestly, if you have a lot of Paragon, you will be able to make up whatever Vitality you don't have in your armor that way, just by investing Paragon into your armor that way. Same thing with Strength. That's why I say it's more important to grow for crit hit ratio into particular armor slots. Again, it's a matter of personal preference, and everybody that does a Diablo video and everybody that plays Diablo is going to have a difference of opinion when it comes to those particular things. My best advice to everybody that's watching this video and trying to figure out things, maybe, because a lot of things in Diablo are very daunting, and that's why I do some of these videos, to help some of the people who are maybe newer, less experienced, haven't had much time to play with, and are just kind of lost in the sauce as to what they should or shouldn't do. It's really a matter of personal preference. As you start experimenting with things, maybe you'll see, I prefer to have higher crit hit chance because I do more damage that way. I'm able to push through things faster. Maybe you're the type of player that likes to be more bulky and not do as much damage to push through things very fast. And that's a perfectly fine playstyle as well. And then maybe you're probably looking for investing more in armor and vitality. It's a matter of your thing. I'm teaching these guys with these video series that I do how to do things so that you're going to be able to get high leaderboard placement and you'll be able to hit some of the higher greater rifts and to do it fast. Because remember, when you're doing a season of Diablo or you're playing regular Diablo, non-seasonal, to get high placement in leaderboard, it comes down to two major factors. How fast you're clearing a greater rift and how high the greater rift is. Tanky builds will do greater rifts at high levels, but they do not clear very fast, which is why a lot of tanky armors in particular are not considered S tier. When you look at the S tier armors that perform very well on the leaderboards, you're looking at things that are spin to win. Spin to win, what do I mean by that? Armors such as Whirlwind Barbarian, which is considered S tier, one of the best armors to use if you're trying to get high leaderboard replacement. And the other spin to win set is for the Demon Hunter. That's the Gears of Dreadland set where you spin to win, and it's a strafe set where you do things that way. Those things clear through things fast, but they're not very tanky builds because they're more heavily rely on doing a lot of damage and clearing through things fast. Our S tier armor build is the Sunwuku Monk, although I would argue that maybe Patterns of Justice is slowly going to creep up and take that away from them, as well as more people kind of experiment with builds for that. But Sunwuku, not very tanky, but does things and clears things very fast and with a lot of damage output if you know how to micromanage your spirit. That does well. Again, another armor where you're not focusing so much on being a tanky thing because you're trying to get high leaderboard placement and just deal a lot of damage and pass through things super fast. What other armors can I talk about? Another armor that's not as fast as the herb, but has been doing extremely well in Season 2, or 22, I should say, and punching through greater rifts is the Masquerade of the Burning Carnival, a.k.a. the Bone Spear Necromancer build. That is not as fast as the other ones, but it's pretty decently fast and can push through greater rifts at high ease because you're able to zone things and just clear through things in a line fast. It's not fast in the sense that it has a lot of mobility, but it clears through straight lines with, like, general ease, which is why it's slowly starting to creep into that argument of, is this an A-tier armor now, or is this an S-tier armor? That's thanks to the bracer that was available that just came out. Bombardment Crusader. That's not really a tanky build because you're punching through things and dropping bombardments and just running around and speed charging. That's an S-tier armor. That's doing very well on the leaderboard. Again, another armor that's not really focused too heavily necessarily on vitality, more so armor. Some people argue that they prefer to have more vitality and armor on there, and that's, again, a matter of your personal play style. But usually bombardments are going to do a lot more damage, and on those sets you want to focus more so on your forwards, not so much on our figs as well, because if you do figs right on those skills, you will be tanky generally as it is. You know, so that's one of the figs. So that's how I'm basically trying to explain things to these guys. When I make a video, it's to show you how to do something effectively, fast, efficient, so that you have a shot at doing very well on the leaderboards and stuff. If you like tanky builds, I did one for you guys already. That will do okay for leaderboard placement, but it's not S tier. That's the Helltooth Zombie Bear build. That's tanky, that's bulky, it can push fig, it's not very fast. Like I said, it's really a matter of your personal play style when it comes to stats on your armor. You could experiment with figs. It depends on the type of player. If you want to go speed and powerful, you're always going to want to invest in crit chance and crit damage, because those are very, very important, because the more times you can procure that, the more damage you do, which means the more damage you do, the higher chance that things explode, usually in one hit, usually in two hit, when you're going to see a lot more billions on your damage meter and stuff. So that's why I recommend that as opposed to thing, and then go strength, and then go maybe armor. Obviously, cooldown on armor is very important. If you have armor that's using area of effect, then you want area of effect. Cost reduction is very helpful on armors. That's stats you look for, so particularly you want to look for that and put that into this particular armor as well. Cooldown is more important, in my opinion, than cost reduction because you're not going to be spending a lot of fury if you're hitting things this hard. Case in point here, I don't spend a lot of fury. So you're probably going to want to look more so for your armors to have cooldown reduction in slots where it's possible. You know, where you have percentage for Call of the Ancients, get 15% if you can. You have to really look at the stats to what you need at the particular time to be the most effective. And remember, you're going to be switching out a lot of your armor pieces a lot. You might have a piece that's Ancient Legendary, but you might run into one that has better stats and has a better roll. Then you're going to want to swap out. So that's one of the things about Diablo. Whatever pieces are you see in this particular build, it's a work in progress, and it's going to depend on what you get particularly to drop for you and what you don't get. So definitely keep that in mind. That's my little PSA because I know it's come up a couple times already in the comment section, and I've addressed all the comments. And like I say, I don't mind comments. I love hearing back feedback, whether it's positive or criticism, as long as it's constructive criticism, obviously. And I definitely love interacting. And I try my best to go back and explain to you guys why certain things are the way they are. But keep in mind, every armor that you even see on here and in other people's videos as well is always going to be work in progress. Yes, Diablo armors are never finished. You're always going to run into eventually a particular piece of armor that will work better for you. So, you know, you're always going to be swapping out. So if you see something that's not necessarily the desirable stat in these videos, keep in mind, sometimes I haven't had that particular piece drop where it's the perfect piece of armor. Ideally, in a perfect world, every armor piece I have would be Primal Ancient Legendary, which guarantees you to have perfect rolls of everything in desirable stats. You could farm for something of that nature, and it will take you forever. On this particular armor, ironically, I believe it's my pants, are actually Primal Ancient Legendary. I got lucky, and I had found those pieces of pants when I was farming for something else. It was just kind of luck of the draw. Okay, case in point here, I'm going to use Threatening Shout because this is going to take a lot longer to kill. Now I'm going to drop the hammer. Pretty much got to tank this and then drop hammer as much as possible and back away when I feel like it's going to one-shot me. So that was pretty fast. Obviously, I need more augmentation if I want to be able to kill that Rift Guardian a bit faster. So pretty much that's why I'm stopping at Greater Rift 75. At Greater Rift 80, probably I'm going to run into problems with a non-fully optimized armor. So unfortunately, I didn't get any new Ancient Legendary pieces here, which pretty much the set is almost fully Ancient Legendary out here because I've been actually getting the pieces of this quite luckily for quite a while since I pretty much started playing Diablo. Alright, I'm going to augment the Bane of the Powerful here, or level it, I should say. This is not going to be used particularly in this armor, but it's something that I want to basically use for augmentation to give this a bit more power here. So remember, when it comes to Immortal Kings, it's use Call of the Ancients, use Wrath of the Berserker, drop some hammer, rinse, recycle, repeat. That's pretty much all you're going to be doing with this armor. So that's pretty much going to do it for today's video. Make sure to give a like and subscribe, and I will see you for the next Diablo 3 video. Take care, guys.